to Crypto Clothesline. We're glad to be here with you. Hanging out the crypto laundry. Getting all the crypto info for you. Crypto Clothesline. Crypto Clothesline.
So, Emmy Rose, tell me, how did it go with the teacher?
Apparently, Atlantis has to get an ear test.
Oh, hang on. She's not eating her food at lunchtime because she can't hear?
Oh, apparently. Well, that's the least of her problems, apparently. So one of the issues that she's having is that she is not paying attention and not responding very well, even when, the teacher is right in front of her asking her to do something. Apparently, Atlantis has a tendency to go blank-faced and, not respond at all. I sound like a dodgy parent because I'm laughing about this, but I see it all the time. And so I've actually given Atlantis my own hearing test.
Oh, how did you do that?
Well, we're in the car and I put music up really loud and I said, if you can hear what I'm saying, then I'll give you a lolly. So I was whispering words underneath my breath. Hello, Atlantis. And she'd be like, I heard you. I'm like, what did you say? Hello, Atlantis. So that's my very B grade hearing test, but I have a funny feeling I'm pretty good at hearing.
But you know that there's all different kinds of hearing, don't you?
Well, I'm assuming that's why the hearing test is going to cost $200. I was like,
well, an audiologist has had a few more ticks in their boxes, but still, I think that was a very good thing to do, just to give it a burn yourself.
Oh, well,
look, there's initiative.
Well, I think maybe it comes down to that she's just not eating enough food and zoning out because blood sugar levels. But I'll still take her to get this legit hearing test. But I'm pretty sure that they're going to come back and say she's got supersonic hearing. I don't even know what your problem is. She's like Superman. It's
good to tick boxes, and specialists are there for a reason. I did experience a similar thing when my son was 2, and he was quite a late developer in terms of speech, and the first thing that they assumed was that there was a hearing issue. So I took him along. He's actually had a series of them over the years, and every single time he's come in 100% acute, hearing.
So is acute really very, very good? Is that what acute means?
Yeah. So my son, when he was from being, say, a crawling baby right through to being nearly 2, he was apparently having developmental issues with speaking. And so the first thing that the specialists assumed was that there was an issue with his hearing. So he's had a series of hearing tests over the course of his lifetime, and he's always come in as absolutely no problem. This kid's absolutely fine. And it just made me wonder. I think it's really good to tick boxes, but I think sometimes there are sort of set protocol paths that specialists or healthcare professionals follow, and they need to eradicate what the problem is not. But I became a little bit cynical around that time. And because he was a late developer, speech-wise, and that was the label given to him, you speak to him now and he'll talk to you about philosophy and all sorts of things. He's still a slow speaker, but he's just a slow thinker. He's not a mercurial brain like his mother and his brother, super quick thoughts and ideas darting everywhere. He's a more methodic kind of a kid. So I feel like he developed language in much the same way, just at my own good pace.
I think I know the son that you're speaking about, and he is a really deep thinker, and he considers a lot, and he sits there and he gives you eye contact, and he's completely absorbed into what you're telling him. I feel like he's almost like a mini poet. How they observe the world and they take it in and, appreciate the essence. And that's how I think he thinks. And
yeah, we were sitting around having a family conversation yesterday about an issue that we've all been experiencing. So I said, okay, we could do this, we could do this, we could do this. And I gave about 5 options. And it's a fairly serious issue for the family. And he sat down and he had such a measured and balanced sort of approach.
That's exactly right. I bet he did.
I felt so much better after listening to him. And I went, I really appreciate the fact that you put so much thought into something before you give your feedback. Whereas the other son is like, bah, 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 you know, just a quick, hard and fast, and let's get on to the next thing, you know.
Oh, they're all different.
Oh my gosh, aren't they? Just, you know, that whole nature-nurture argument or, you know, discussion that we've touched on before in our parenting, but all children are so, so different. And it's trippy as a parent because you think they've all had the same home environment, they've had the same neurotic parents, they've had the same chances in life, and yet they're all so, so different.
I'm really grateful because life would be a total snore. We should have a listen to the next part 2 of our interview with Leah from Intimate.
Oh, it's so interesting. I love the bit where she talks about smile makers. So listen out for that.
And also her ICO has the public sale has passed. So hopefully they're on track with their timeline.
Yeah, she said that there was a hard cap that they were shooting for. I love the fact that, you know, looking at the premise of Intimate was making transactions really accessible for both parties. It was really interesting where she talked about privacy and transparency within the same sentence. That was cool. But also the whole notion of creating a reputation both for the workers and clients so that everybody's safe.
Did you hear us talk about pseudonymously? How she's like, is that a new word or something that I've never heard? She's
so
like,
if you think of the word pseudonym.
Yeah, because she's like, it's not anonymous, or she didn't mention that it's anonymous, but she did say it's, I don't know, pseudonymously, you know.
Pseudonymously is like using a nickname. That's why she mentioned 1, 2, 3. Yeah.
Are they the first ones who are doing that? That's what I want to know, because it's such a good idea and so easily created on a blockchain.
Yeah, yeah. And it's also very prevalent in the industry, isn't there? You know, when you see people communicating with each other using all that sort of false hot language, that makes me sound like I listen to porn. I don't know. It's bad.
Well, I remember in high school and we were very cool, Abheeti, and we used to make up stripper names for ourselves. And you had to come up with your, you know, what was the name of your first pet? What was the name of your, remember these? And what's the name of the first street you ever lived in? And what's your favorite lolly or something?
No, I just thought that was for my internet banking password.
Well, you must have a really sexy password, because mine would have been Misty Willard Candy or something, you know, like such a hot stripper name, you know. And I think a lot of people use these, you know, these names. So using the blockchain pseudonymously, is that what it is? Pseudonymously. It's awesome. Yes. It's revolutionary.
It is. I was interested though, and I felt like we could have talked more about that, about the protecting each other's reputations as opposed to just getting brownie points and finding the positives. I feel like that was something that we could have clarified a bit more, but she did say that we could speak to the developer about that. Yeah,
and also it's not on, they're not actually going to tackle it for a couple of years. Isn't that what she said?
Yeah, 3 or 4 years. Yeah.
So yeah, look, I definitely think that's going to be an issue, to be honest, because reputation on the blockchain's there forever.
Yeah, even if it is pseudonymous, you still, you know, if somebody makes a false claim against you, either as a client or as a worker, they're both incredibly damaging to your reputation, i.e. your potential to earn.
Have you ever had, this one time I had a very high score on eBay because I was selling clothes on there, and one day somebody left a terrible review, and obviously it downs your average, and it wasn't an accurate review. I can't reverse that review, and I actually went and created a brand new account so that I could start from scratch, so that I didn't have that black mark on my name. And to build up my eBay account again, you know, it's a stupid star. You know, I don't think they're going to have this star value. I don't think Internet's going to have that rating.
Yeah.
It destroyed my business. Not that it was a big business, but, you know.
From the other side, as a consumer, I got some help from a guy who made book covers on Fiverr. And he had a 5-star rating, so I chose him. He was so rude. He didn't send the right information. He was completely, completely sanctimonious. And I just found his treatment of me and his approach to me really demeaning and really low class. And I actually reflected that in my rating. And he got so angry with me because he said I'd ruined his 5-star rating. And I'm like, well, look at your products and services. So I'm not saying that that was the case for you, but it goes both sides, doesn't it? That whole rating system can really undo you.
It absolutely would. And so I understand why they're not going to tackle that for a while. It's a difficult one.
Yeah, starting with transactions and working forward from there.
Well, let's have a
listen. I feel really, really passionate about sort of the emancipation. I just want to take the man bit out of emancipation, the effeminancipation, sorry, quick Gemini aside, of women. And I wrote a blog. We spoke to a lady called Portia Burton a couple of months ago on the podcast. And she talked about fair pay for sex workers. And it had a sort of a similar slant to what you were talking about. And she was coming from the perspective of if that payments could be made via the blockchain, then it would be very clear whether the money had gone through. It could be held in escrow and, righty-right. So you could pay in crypto and different approaches on that. But it got me thinking to my past. I've lived in both Japan and I've lived in Italy, and in both of those places I either worked with or lived next door to sex workers. And in both of those places, from my privileged white upbringing, I had a pretty poor judgment on these ladies until I got to know them better. And I guess that's just me undoing my own social conditioning. And I've written quite a bit about this following our interview with Portia. So where was I going with all this?
Can I just thank you for admitting that? Because I think we all have prejudices and they've all been taught to us by some experience in our life, but it's often not an experience with the actual subject. It's something that someone has told us or a movie has depicted to us, and we don't realize that until we have the courage to go and challenge our own perceptions of the world. And if more people were willing to actually talk to a sex worker and just have a real conversation and see that they're a real human who just goes to work every day and probably is dealing with way bigger issues at work than any of us are, they're really fascinating, emotional people who are some of the most socially apt people I've ever met, because they're often psychologists more than they are sex workers. But we just have this thing that like they're, some kind of scary, awful, dirty person that you're not allowed to just reach out to and say, hey. So I just want to say thank you for that, admitting that you had to challenge your own assumptions.
Oh, big time. But it was awesome. And this has been unfolding over 20 years. I realise you still firmly clutch on to beliefs, largely unconscious beliefs, that you can unpack them over the course of a lifetime and go, oh my gosh, I never knew I had such a bias against, in this case, I was looking at African, South American sex workers on the streets of Genova, and I had a house there and I would walk my dog, and I had to, pick up, I'd like to say, in terms of, moral police women, the only person who picked up their dog shit off the street. But that's how I got to know these girls, because they would pat my dog and we'd chat away. And I was a little bit sort of alarmed by the heavily made up faces and the leopard skin suits and things. So that it was that sort of made me feel nervous about them. But it was when I got to know their story and I got to understand how they even ended up there in the first place. And they're actually the product of a modern slave trade industry, which is rife in Europe and other places. I was completely floored. Like, it was a complete undoing of all my ideas of that these women had actually necessarily even chosen this, and that they were feeling, not all of them, I guess, but certainly the ladies that I got to know were stuck between a rock and a hard place. Their legal identification and documentation had been sequestered when they arrived in the country, so they literally had no way of getting away. So I guess I was interested to know what your take is on all of that, how blockchain can help women who don't necessarily want to stay in the sex industry and are there against their will.
My number one position on this is that no matter what you do for work, every single person who goes to work should enjoy the same rights and protection as any other worker in the world, no matter what you do. Like, I had someone challenge me the other day at a crypto conference, and he said, I've read the white paper, I get the use case, but I have a moral problem with this. And I said, that's fine. A lot of people do. Can you explain it to me? And he said, I just know that there's no woman that would ever choose this job if she had another option. And I said, I think that's an assumption of many. The problem is that consensual sex work is all too often conflated with human trafficking. That's a social and legal problem that Intimate has some ideas about how we can address that. But the problem there is that actually, law enforcers spend their time going after consensual sex workers. And I mean, when I'm talking about consensual sex workers, it could be someone who's chosen this career path and they absolutely love it. And I know plenty of women who are like this, who have chosen it voluntarily. They're great at their job. They don't want to do anything else in the world. There's also consensual sex workers who just need to put food on the table and have found it difficult to find another job, whether that's because, they're just finding it difficult to be employed, or perhaps they have a disability or a mental health issue which prevents them from doing the 9-to-5 grind. And this is a job that pays well enough that allows them to be able to work on the days that they feel good. Whatever the case is, they should be allowed to do their job. And I think that the problem is the stigmatization that comes from industry that prevents them from being able to ask for help when things go wrong. And also, if they do want to get out of the industry, to get another job. So this is the irony of it. Like, people will pass judgment upon them, but then if they want to change industries and they're asked for their job history, I mean, what are they going to do? Are they going to be honest about it? Because of course not. They're not going to get a job. And that's where I just find the horrendous irony of this. And that's something I could go on about for days, but I won't, because I'll just get mad. In answer to your question, though, how does crypto solve this? The first thing that crypto does is allow people the right to transact. I mean, at the moment, they are blocked from being able to use advanced payment methods in order to collect payment, and also to screen clients and verify identification, which is obviously incredibly important for safety. So they're forced to use cash. I mean, cash is still the ultimate currency for this industry. But I guess it's easiest for me to talk about Intimate specifically. With this system, you'd be able to obviously transact, take payment in Intimate, move it out to fiat when and as you need, but also be afforded the right to transact privately. I guess the biggest problem that I've seen with the existing currencies, a lot of people say, like, well, why do we need a new token? Why don't you just use Bitcoin or Zcash or Dash or Monero or something that has privacy capabilities? The thing is, like, a lot of websites will actually allow you to use those currencies now, but a lot of people aren't. And it's because they're general currencies that don't have features and functionality that is actually tailored to the industry. And they're not working on building industry partnerships that actually help build an ecosystem within an existing industry. They're a functional currency which you can use, but you tend to need to be pretty clued up in order to do it. And as I said, there's no real features that relate to your job. With Intimate, it's not a privacy coin. A lot of people think that it's a privacy coin, but we're not. It's a pseudonymous reputation system. So what we do is we solve that problem where clients want to be able to transact privately. So they can. They build a pseudonym. So I'll just call myself Hot Girl 123. And that's not connected to my private life. However, I can verify my profile by doing things like having my ID verified through an off-chain oracle. So that would be hashed to my profile to be able to say I've had my ID verified, but I don't have to actually reveal the details of my passport or a driver's license to anyone. I've revealed it to an off-chain oracle who has verified it. So we can both trust that oracle or not. It might depend on the trustworthiness of the oracle, because I have to show who's actually done it. But none of that information is actually on the blockchain, so I don't have to worry about being found out in that way. Other things that I might use to verify my pseudonym is my sexually transmitted infection health checkup records. So I could have that verified by an off-chain medical oracle and show that perhaps I update those every 3 months. And that might be to prove that I'm clean, or even to show that I'm HIV positive, but I take the correct medications and practice safe sex. So they're things that I can do with my pseudonym. But again, none of that is actually attached to my private life. It's purely building the reputation of my pseudonym. Then when I go to transact, my transactions are completely public and available to be seen by everyone. The significance of this is that at the moment, there's nothing to provide recognition and reward for good actors within this network. And unfortunately, there are a lot of bad actors. And it's just too easy for people to be able to cover their steps in this industry. And I think that's disappointing for the people who actually are good customers and should be allowed to, I guess, skip the queue because they should be recognised as someone who has built a good reputation for themselves. So what happens is essentially as I transact, part of the intimate transaction, intimate token is burned, and that rewards me with some reputation. It's based on subjective feedback like Airbnb, and over time as I build that reputation, that gives people the sense of trust that they can actually deal with me and do it reputably and safely. In the same way that, like, you know, it wasn't that many years ago that if I said to you, oh, yeah, I just found this person online and I'm going to go and stay in their room in their house across the other side of the world. It's like, What? Are you crazy? But these reputation systems are extremely powerful in being able to build trust. In the same way that Uber transformed the personal transport experience. You know, it used to be awful to go and get a taxi because taxi drivers had no incentive to do anything good for you. But now you get into an Uber and they're like, hey, man, how you going? Can I get you some water? Would you like me to wind down the window? What do you want to listen to on the radio? Do you want me to talk to you? Do you want me to shut up? Because they want to adhere to their reputation and make sure that it doesn't drop. Same with riders. So that's really powerful, but we don't have anything like that in the adult industry at the moment.
Leah, can I ask a quick question exactly about that? What happens if, say, for example, somebody's a good actor, to use your words, but somebody's got it in for them, or they're a bit poopy with them, or they didn't like the way they looked at them or whatever, and they actually created a profile or helped to contribute to a profile which wasn't true. So they said something about somebody that wasn't necessarily true. How is that filtered to make sure that both clients and workers are protected from untrue or false claims?
Yeah, it's a really good question. It's something that we have spent a lot of time talking about. So the way that the reputation system works, I'll start with the Yelp example because that's probably where bad reputation or people who have tried to damage the reputation of others has been most prevalent. The problem with Yelp is that their reputation and feedback was not linked to transactions. So you could essentially go and leave as much feedback as you like, no matter how many times you'd transacted with a restaurant. So I might not have even ever bought anything from you. I might be the restaurant down the road that just wants to make you look bad, but I could go and leave 50 reviews that look bad on your website and there's nothing really to stop me. I could go to the centralized platform and complain, but, you know, I'm going to have to prove that I'm actually not a shit restaurant and have to get those comments taken down. Uber and Airbnb and eBay are better examples because they're based on the transaction. But the problem is too that those ones tend to be based on ratings, and it's more about just kind of searching and looking at who has the greatest transaction history. Intimate is a bit different because it's based on a web of trust. And how that works is essentially it looks at your 6 degrees of separation with other people in the network and how you're connected. So, for example, I might be going out to go and book an escort and I could just go and see who has the biggest rating, but they may not really be relevant to me. Like they may be really popular with a lot of people, but perhaps they don't serve the particular kink or niche that I'm looking for, or, you know, whatever is relevant to me. But based on the people that are around me within my network, that could be friends that I'm connected to, or perhaps other people that I've transacted with previously, or people who have things within their data that are relevant to me, like perhaps they look for similar types of services or they're based in a similar location. All of that information is weighted to be able to show you a reputation that is relevant to you. So for us, this is quite technically ambitious and it's further down the roadmap. So it kicks in sort of around year 3 and 4 for us. Building out the payments network is critical first. So we actually have that ecosystem of people who are transacting. But when the web of trust actually starts to work, we call it a web of trust because it's not just about who has the most stars, because there might be other people out there who have transacted far less on the network, but they're more relevant to me because that's what I'm into. It's not something that I am the best person to talk about. I could actually put you in touch with our blockchain analyst who has actually authored our reputation system, and he is absolutely amazing. It's just you kind of listen to him in awe with your mouth dropped open. But I'm more than happy to put you in touch with him for a follow-up if it's of interest.
Leah, you mentioned your timeline and the web of trust is a little way away, but where are you on your timeline now?
So we are currently at public sale. It ends next week, actually, on the 7th of June. So we've raised 6.1 million to date. That's toward our 16.85 hard cap. There's only a week to go, but I know that a lot of these things are based on FOMO, and we're actually in chats with some people who want to put in quite large packets. So we're still pretty confident that we'll get close to the hard cap. So watch this space. But once we finish the token sale, we go head on into building the technology. We're actually already working on integrating the payment gateway into one of our partners, which is Rendezvous, that I mentioned before. So very soon after the close of the token sale, you'll be able to spend Intimate tokens on Rendezvous. I think that's what sets us apart from other projects as well, because we will have real utility in the token so quickly. And that's really exciting for us because that was always our goal. We're not, launching a token just to make a boatload of money and then just dump all the tokens. We actually want to be able to solve industry problems and create a token with real utility that people can use every day. So Rendezvous is our MVP essentially. And once we roll that out and have a few transactions on that, at the moment, we're just starting to build out our product documentation for the API and SDK, which anyone will be able to access in order to implement Intimate as a payment gateway on their website. So we hope to have a lot of this done before the end of the year. We're rolling it out very quickly. First with foundational partners, just so obviously we can keep it contained and make sure that we understand all the different nuances of different people's businesses, because we do work with everything from pleasure product retailers to Japanese love hotels to escort agencies to live camming platforms to adult content platforms to dating apps. So obviously all of these will use the system in a slightly different way. So we want to make sure that we've got a great product that we can roll out, and then that will be available for anyone to be able to install. There's a lot planned for this year, and I am excited and nervous because I don't think I'm going to be getting any more sleep. It's going to get more hectic, but it's pretty amazing because it does feel like we're doing really great work that's really impacting people's lives. So that makes it all worth it.
So Leah, to summarize this amazing conversation we've had today, and just to summarize the premise of what Intimate's all about, you personally, as a woman, you're really interested in empowering women, and especially at sort of cleaning up the act so much of the stigmatism around women who are sex workers and in related fields.
And just women who have sex, and men and trans people, everyone, yeah.
Intimate's looking at creating a solid platform as a payment gateway so that it's reducing the bias against sex industries, or I'm trying to say businesses that are involved in the industry, and also to create some sort of clarity of reputation of both workers and clients so that everyone is safer in the space. Would that be a good synopsis?
That's an amazing summary. The only thing I would add to this is that some people get real hung up on the adult industry thing, and I like to be able to just pose the question, tell me an industry in the future that will not want a solution to be able to transact privately and safely. I mean, to me, the adult industry is the industry that has the biggest pain point for this right now. And the reason they have such a big pain point for it is because no one else is trying to solve the problem because of the stigma associated with the industry. That's why it makes it so great for us, because we can go in there and do it and prove a lot of concepts within blockchain and crypto around anonymity, pseudonymity, transactions. At the moment, it's very difficult for people to use crypto as just an everyday currency. It's becoming a store of value for most. We want to be able to change that and make something that people can actually use. So many big concepts in blockchain that we can use the adult industry as a concept for. And I thoroughly believe that Intimate will be the use case to prove pseudonymous reputation, which will be representative for every industry in future. So, this solution could be white labeled for every industry in the future. So I'd really challenge people to think about it from that perspective that, this isn't a sex coin. It's an opportunity to develop some of the biggest opportunities in this space.
So it's almost like you take the template that you're working, and you happen to be working in the adult industry. So take away that label and call it the car industry or call it the shipping industry. Is that what you mean? And you can almost apply that same template to any business that wants to be successful.
Yeah, the most obvious one that people often relate us to at the moment is any industry that is stigmatized. So cannabis industry is another one. Like, for example, in California, it is completely legal to consume cannabis recreationally, but they still have massive problems with banking because the banks are governed on a federal level. So on a federal level, cannabis is still illegal. So if you go into a pot shop in California, there's an ATM in the shop where you have to take out cash to pay for your pot because you can't buy it through EFT. Another one is gambling, another heavily regulated industry that, I mean, it's probably the most advanced, but it's just a nightmare to run a business in that space because it is still seen as a vice tech, technology for the vices. So they're the kind of the ones that we always get compared to. People always go, oh, but Bitcoin came from the dark net. And I'm like, yeah, why do we have such a thing about this? If you just think about it, the way that this technology came about was that people wanted to be able to transact with each other privately with someone across the other side of the world they've never met before without interference from a trusted intermediary. Now we have this currency that is, banks and governments are some of the biggest proponents of. So if we can all just get over our upset about, sex or drugs, it's like, yeah, well, guess what? These industries are the ones that have been expelled from the usual pace of innovation because people have a problem with it. But if we actually look at them, they're actually some of the ones producing this underground technology that could actually completely reimagine the world for the better. So I guess that's what I'm passionate about. It's just kind of removing the adult label and going, what is the problem we're solving here without judging it?
I think too, you could look at it with the Star Wars analogy. I tend to use this a lot, but I do have, kids who are 8 to 13. But Star Wars features in our life. I never thought I'd be a Star Wars fab. There's a dark side and a light side to everything. So, you've got the dark net, you've got transactions, and there is a certain element of I don't know what they're doing, what's going on out there, what's happening with all the illegal this and that and something else. And then you've got this incredible transitions towards creating solutions to problems and solving issues that governments and big business and banks and all the other, biggies haven't ever really addressed. I feel that we have two sides to the coin. It's a bit of a yin-yang moment.
Totally. And I'm just excited to work in a space where I get to meet really cool people every single day, compassionate, strong, ambitious people who have a lot of hardship thrown their way, and yet they continue to push for something that they're passionate about. And I've met people who live up to that description in the sustainability industry, in the HR industry, in advertising, and in the sex industry. And I think it's really cool, though, to be able to be aligned with a group of people that deserve to have a different image. So I guess that's what compels us every day to do what we do.
Well, thank you so much, Leah, for sharing your story. And the launch is next week. Hopefully we have this podcast up before. It's been an awesome interview, jam-packed. I think we will make it 2 interviews.
Yeah, you being just so into it as well. It's a real pleasure to be able to go into detail about what we're trying to achieve. So thank you.
Yeah, I just feel like such an area or anything to do with the sex industry, the first sense I get as a white, privileged white female, I keep calling myself that, but it's like, and then I think back over the course of my life, how many women that I've met in this country and in other countries that are in the sex industry. And I'm like, okay, we really need to start losing some of these onion skin layers and just get down to the absolute core basics that we're human beings doing our best to live well on a planet.
Thank you so much, Leah.
Thank you. I'm so glad that you reached out. Thank you.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, guys. Talk to you soon.
Bye. How good was that?
Well, as part 2 of what we started last week, just amazing. I'm so impressed with how eloquently and fully this woman can explain the position she's in and the reason she's doing what she's doing, and her passion for empowering women, all women and men and transgender, and that she talked about it as being mainly women in this industry.
Well, I'm a little bit disappointed that we didn't get to talk a bit longer, actually. If I had have known that it was going to be split up into 2, I would have been rambling on a lot more. Because, we both had some pretty juicy questions to ask, didn't we?
I would have liked it to have gone longer too. I would have liked to have been able to address the whole consensual versus trafficking aspect of the industry, human trafficking and stuff, because that was part of the juicy questions I wanted to ask in terms of children being sold into into sex labour and what have you as well. But that wasn't something that we got to address this time round. Perhaps we can another time.
We might actually have to have a part 3 of the interview.
Yes, yeah, really interesting. I like the fact that she said no matter what you do for work, you should enjoy the same rights and protection. I feel that that's the basis of the work that she's doing, where she's coming from in terms of her ethics.
She's obviously standing up for people to have, a right to, receive and send payments, ethically and fairly. But I think they're focused on people who are in consensual sexual experiences, not the other, because the other one's pretty, that's another ICO in itself.
That's a totally different thing, and it's something I'm really passionate about because, remember that stuff that I wrote after the interview with Portia Burton based on my experience living in Italy and what have you. But I actually found that really lovely because I talk about my bias, my judgment, and it still sits with me. I don't pretend that I'm absolutely fine with it all. But when I spoke about my experience with those women living in inner city Genova, it was lovely just to hear her say, good on you for admitting that. And I was like, oh, thanks.
It's not just a bias with the adult industry. We've all got biases, all over the place that are just created just from thin air because of our social experiences, what we've been seeing on TV and stuff. So as a human race, we need to start working on that and just cutting some judgment right out.
Because you could have been working on yourself for years and been a meditator and reached this state of inner bliss. And then every now and then you get this sort of left of center thought that comes in going, asshole or something. And you're like, whoa, I've got a really strong judgment around this, whether it's idiots on the road, not that I said idiots, whether it's people with driving challenges on the road or whatever. You actually realize that even if you proclaim yourself to be, someone who's really self-aware, these slamming judgments come into your psyche and often come out of your mouth, in my case. I actually also realize how much I'm passing on to my kids that way too.
Then it's a vicious cycle, isn't it? I do it all the time and I have to keep myself in check. Oh, and it's a toughie and we're working on ourselves.
It's just another part of parenting.
Yeah. What a job.
Just tell me one thing. Is Atlantis eating more for lunch this week than she was last week?
Yeah, because she gets an ice block when she gets home.
Oh, she gets an icy pole, depending on what side of the country you're on. If we got an ice block, it would have been like a block of ice out of the fridge with no flavouring. Cool.
Until next time, Abheeti, I will catch you in 7 days.
Have a great week.
You too. Bye.
Bye.
Hi, you've called Abheeti.
And Amy Rose.
At Crypto
Clothesline.
Leave a message after the...
I really feel like I need to be giving you ladies some solid advice. And it feels like that nobody is being upfront and speaking honestly to you, like face to face, except that you can't see mine. And I am calling anonymously, but I really, I've got to share an experience. Like you ladies are speaking about all this stuff, like this invisible money that you can't see and you can't touch and all of that. And so, I went into my bank and I said to my bank teller, and we've known each other for some time. I think I'd met her about 5 minutes, by the time we'd had this conversation. And I asked her if I could possibly open one of my accounts in Bitcoin. She just about chuckled me out of the bank, and I nodded knowingly, and I said, I know it sounds just crazy, but I've been listening to these two ladies on this quite frankly ridiculous podcast, and they're speaking about things like Bitcoin and other kind of currencies, which are money, and the bank knew nothing about it. I just don't know where you ladies are heading, but I wish you could get your facts straight. You cannot use Bitcoin at the bank to open an account. So, go and work out reality from fantasy, ladies.
Crypto Clothesline.